So we're going to continue in our series, Lord of the Fries. And our text today will, to some degree, address the entire psalm of Psalm 50, but verses 9 through 12 is kind of the focal point. And the title, I think, is just this reminder. It goes from the story goes. I read it. The story goes that there's a father and a son who are in a bit of an argument because the father is asking the son, can he have some of his fries, right? And we all know that when we kind of like sit down for dinner, you know, I have my plate, you have your plate, and it's something like, don't you kind of feel violated if somebody like reaches over to your plate to get something off your plate? Maybe you haven't experienced that, but it's kind of like, man, why didn't you get your own? Like, you know, we were at the drive-thru. I asked you if you want anything. You said no. I get home. I'm comfortable, and now you want to sip my soda. You want to eat some. You want to bite of my hot dog when I could have just got you your own. So anyway, the father is reaching for the son's fries, and the son is reluctant to share. And the father reminds the son, well, I'm the Lord of the. I paid for the fries. Technically, those are my fries, right? That's where the title comes from, is this reminder that the son was only a steward of the fries that his father had paid for, right? Maybe that's a stretch, being a steward, but you guys get where I'm going, right? That's the heart of the title. As we are kind of talking about giving, it's this reminder that God is Lord of all. Of our bodies, of our hearts, of our minds, of the things that we have, of our gifts. If we really truly believe in the Lord like we say we do, then part of that belief is understanding that everything that we have comes from God. And I think to some degree, like Brother Andre just said, that part of the struggle is there's always this internal fight of like whether we really believe that what we have is God's. So when I think about my singing voice, right, you know, I might like, well, you know, God wasn't there when I was listening to Boyz II Men songs and singing the parts over and over again until I learned how to harmonize. Or was he? Right, in the smallest areas of our life, if we start to attribute everything that we have to God, then that needs to shape how we interact. This text does that. And when I think about even just the Psalms that say the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, you know, there are constant reminders in Scripture that God owns everything. He's the creator. He created the heavens and the earth. He created man and woman. He created the cattle and the insects, all of these things. And I think that sometimes we say stuff so often that we forget the depth of its meaning. But when we say things like God is the creator of all, like, it literally means he's the creator of all. When Jeremiah says, I know the plans that I have for you, right? It's this reminder that God has been a part of our story, our individual stories, our collective stories from the very inception of who we are. And I believe there are some expectations that come along with that. So question that I want to use as a guiding question today then is this. If everything on this earth belongs to God, the cattle on the thousand hill, right? The insects, the water, the trees, if all of these things belong to God, why do I have to give it back? Why do I need to give back to God the things that he's given to me? Is God being stingy? You know, when you borrow something from one of your friends, it's like no take-backs. Am I dating myself like somewhere in the middle where like the younger folks don't know that slang and the older folks don't know that slang either? I'm just like somewhere in the middle. Well, no take-backs is like something that you would say if you like, you know, gave somebody something and then they can't take it back because they changed their mind, right? You ever like give somebody something and you're like, oh, you know what? That was a mistake. I want it back. It's like no take-backs. So God, why do you, or why should I give things back that you've given to me? That's my guiding question, because I believe as we go through this text, there's two things that we learn. The first thing is this, that God's request of us is an opportunity to respond to his blessings with thanksgiving. That God's request of us when he asks things of us, our tithes, our offering, our lives, our hearts, our minds, is an opportunity to respond to him and his blessings with thanksgiving. The second thing is this, and this I think becomes an even bigger challenge, is that our gifts are pointless if our lives don't match the gifts themselves. Our gifts are pointless if our lives don't match the gifts themselves. We'll dig into that. First thing we see is this. The first 6 verses in chapter 50 says, "The mighty one God, the Lord, speaks and summons the earth from the rising of the sun to where it sets. From Zion, perfect in beauty, God shines forth. Our God comes and will not be silent. A fire devours before him, and around him a tempest rages. He summons the heavens above and the earth that he may judge his people. Gather to me this consecrated people who made a covenant with me by sacrifice. And the heavens proclaim his righteousness, for he is a God of justice. For he is a God of justice." The first thing that we see in the first 6 verses of this text is Asaph, who wrote this particular psalm. Asaph, who was a Levite priest, stands witness to God pronouncing his judgment on his creation, and particularly the children of Israel, his chosen people. And I think the reason why, right, we see so much dialogue between God and the children of Israel is because as his chosen people, the expectation was that they would know him better than anybody else. And not only would they know him better than anybody else, but their lives will reflect that they were chosen by God and the things that God has asked them to do, so that the story of the children of Israel would be a testimony to the rest of the world as they came in contact with them. And so God, the creator of heaven and earth, having chosen the children of Israel and made this covenant with them, right, is now coming to judge the fact that they continuously fall short of the covenant that they made with God. And one of the things that I think that can get lost, because I believe that we must celebrate salvation, we have to celebrate and be joyful in the fact that Jesus Christ died for our sins, that he rose again on the 3rd day, and because of his sacrifice, we have an opportunity to be in right relationship with Jesus Christ. We celebrate that. That's the centerpiece of the gospel. But I believe that what often gets lost is the fact that as a result of us accepting this free gift, there's a responsibility that we have as it pertains to our relationship with God. Like, God expects things from his people. Right? It's the gift of salvation was a free gift, but it came with a particular set of lifestyle that God wants us to live, right? And so God, it says in these first 6 verses, is coming to judge creation. And when the text talks about, and the heavens proclaim his righteousness, for he is a God of justice, you know, he summons the heavens above and the earth, it's this literary tool that the psalmist is using to say that the earth and the creation are witnesses to the destruction that our sinful humanity has caused. Who better to testify in this place of judgment than creation? And so it says he summons the heavens above, and he summons the earth that may judge his people. It says, "Gather to me my consecrated people who made a covenant with me by sacrifice, and the heavens proclaim his righteousness, for he is a God of justice." Justice, this word that I think causes so much uproar in the church, unfortunately, but we are constantly reminded that justice, or being a God of justice, is one of the characteristics that God has. that God cares about justice. And biblically, justice means to make right. Justice is first and foremost a relational term, so people living in right relationship with God and one another and natural creation. And so from a scriptural point of view, justice means loving our neighbor as we love ourselves, and is rooted in the character and nature of God. God is just and loving, so we are called to do justice and live in love. And so the God of justice is coming to proclaim justice to his unjust people who have not lived into the covenant that they agreed with. Justice, this making right. And so as God is coming to judge, he is coming to make right in many ways the things that we have left undone. That's how we start. The next thing is this, verses 7 through 13. And here's where I think, we take that first piece from, because it says, listen, my people, and I will speak. I will testify against you, Israel. I am God, your God. I bring no charges against you concerning your sacrifices or concerning your burnt offerings, which are before me. I have no need of a bull from your stall or of goats from your pens. For every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and the insects in the fields are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and all that is in it. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Here's why this is important. Because in that time, it was believed that many of the other gods that the other communities worshipped needed the sacrifices of the people that worshiped them. Baal gods needed the bulls to be sacrificed because that was where these lower G gods got their sustenance. There was this need-based relationship that the lower G gods had with the people, where it was almost like a barter system, to the degree that they almost felt like they could manipulate their gods by withholding their offerings, because those gods needed their offerings to survive. So here is God now trying to help the children of Israel to understand, I'm going to use slang, I don't need you. I don't need your stuff. I don't need your bulls. I don't need your cattle. Because in the reality, it's mine anyway. The cattle is mine on 1,000 hills. The bulls are mine. All of these things that you are bringing to me already belong to me. So you can't manipulate me by bringing me these things or not bringing me these things, because they already belong to me. And so your sacrifices to me don't give you control over me, because I don't need them anyway. That's basically like the summation of these couple of verses. So then it brings back up that why do we bring gifts? I'm not going to answer it yet. But God is saying, as he's pronouncing judgment, first and foremost, as I'm judging you, know that I don't need your stuff. And that's a scary thing, because how many of us barter in our relationships? Whether we do it with malice or not, we barter with our kids. I think sometimes in our worst moment, we barter with our spouses, right? Even the monetary system, it's a barter system. I work for this money, you give me this money. I take this money, I go buy stuff. There's this, and so what do you do in a relationship where you need the deity and the deity doesn't need anything from you? As a matter of fact, it was the text that says, if you refuse to praise me, the rocks will cry out. So even if we don't praise or submit to God, creation will sing God's praises. So we have allowed ourselves to be a little bit self-absorbed and believe that God needs us when he really doesn't. If I refuse to accept the call to preach the gospel, God would use somebody else. If I refuse to share the good news, God will use somebody else. God will use y'all following me? So God is trying to get the people to understand, I don't need you. Then the next section of the text says this, and we'll bring it all back. Verse 14 through 21. He then goes on, after he lets them know that he doesn't need them, to then pronounce both blessings and judgment on the people. So it says, sacrifice thank offerings to God, fulfill your vows to the Most High, and call on me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you will honor me. This is this reminder, hey, there are blessings that come with honoring your vows to me and sacrificing to me, because when you need me, I'll be there, right? And I like to break the whole concept of blessings up, because I think that sometimes, again, we don't consider that there are levels to blessings, or there's a difference between blessings and favor that I believe are aligned with our obedience to God. And here's what I mean by this. We wake up, that's a blessing, right? We have the activity of our limbs. That's a blessing. Like so many of the things that we take for granted, right? When God blesses us, or he acknowledges us, these are ways that God blesses us, whether or not we deserve it or not. But I believe that there is another layer of blessing or favor that comes with our maturity in our faith, our faith in God, and the way that we interact with God, because God knows that he can trust us with more. If I use children as an example, children can grow up in the same house, have the same parents, virtually the same upbringing, depending on the age of the parents when you have kids, because I hear like the older you get, the less you parent. We'll see when this new baby comes. And be completely different. When I was growing up, my mom knew that she could trust me with the keys to the house, because she knew that I was going to go where she told me to go. I was a rule follower. I was going to come back. I wasn't going to invite people in the house. And then when she got home, I was most likely either going to be reading or sitting in front of the TV. My sister, on the other hand, was not as responsible. And so the responsibility and the gift that it was to have the freedom to go and come as I please was not afforded to my sister, because my mom couldn't trust her with that responsibility. We both still ate, right? We both still had clean clothes. We both still had a bed. We both still had a blanket. But there was a level of responsibility that I received from my mom, because my mom knew that she could trust me. And one of the things that I think that we miss in blessing, and as we ask God to bless us or give us more, is asking ourselves, hey, can God trust me with what I'm asking for? And sometimes the answer to that is like, well, how am I living in relationship to God right now? And how am I living in relationship to the things that he's already blessed me with? So God goes on to say in these next verses, he says, but to the wicked, so he's calling out the wicked, he says, what right have you to recite my laws or take my covenant on your lips? You hate my instruction and cast my words behind you. When you see a thief, you join him. You throw in your lot with adulterers. You use your mouth for evil and harness your tongue to deceit. You sit and testify against your brother and slander your own mother's son. When you did these things and I kept silent, You thought I was exactly like you, but I now arraign you and set my accusations before you. And here is what God is trying to get them to understand. It's a few things. So the first thing he is saying, listen, how dare you bring me sacrificial offerings? Because when I bring a sacrificial offering to the people who are around, it seems like I'm living into my godly duties or my godly expectations. Because the people who are around don't know my heart. So remember last week we talked about the heart and how the heart in the Jewish culture was kind of like the root or the centerpiece of man. This is where this idea comes from. It's this reminder that even though like the world can see our action, God knows our heart. God knows our intentions. God knows what we feel, what we think, what we are. So no matter what we say, God can see past the lip service and past the physical service, and he sees to the heart of men and women. That's why when people like when they do stuff and they're like, oh, well, God knows my heart, I'm always like, yes, he does. God knows. Now he it's not just your intentions, he knows your heart. Like, oh, well, I meant well, sure, but God knows your heart. And so what this is saying is, you're bringing offerings, but you actually despise me. You despise my mandates. You despise my commands. You despise what I'm calling you to. You're bringing the offering out of just this desire to appear as if you're holy, but I really know how you feel. Again, it's already mine. I don't need it. And so he's challenging them to make sure that as they bring the offerings, that their lives and their hearts match the offerings that they are bringing. And there's this, and it keeps talking about thank offerings in the text. And so for me, it brings up the centerpiece of why God is calling us to give. But the last thing I'll say is this. So then it says in verse 21, when you did these things and I kept silent, you thought I was exactly like you, but now I arraign you and set my customs before you. Because God didn't immediately respond with destruction. To some degree, the children of Israel began to assume or feel like, well, maybe what we're doing is okay. I'm going to use kids again. How many times have you got that call from the teacher and you know your kid cut up from school and they get in the car and they're just like ready for you to go off? Miss Johnson called me today. I know that you were talking back. You didn't turn in your homework. You just, you want to stop at Sonic? Okay. Want to get those new gym shoes you asked for? Cool. And then like drives kids. I don't know about you, it drives my kids crazy because they're like ready to get in trouble. And this is like, nope. And so I'm asking myself, okay, well, what's happening? Why didn't God respond immediately? Why didn't God, because I'm kind of like the pouncer in my house, right? The minute somebody does something wrong, it's like, oh, you did this. And Brandy's kind of like, Brandy will let, 5 or 6 things, 10 things build up. And I'm more like, if I see you, like I'm like, y'all ever see that movie Minority Report? Where like you get in trouble before you do, like if you think about doing something, you get in, like I'm like Minority Report cops. I'm like, you look like you're about to do something that's wrong. So like, hey, you're on punishment, right? I guess that's why we balance just out. So, but what I realize is that in those moments where God is not immediately responding to us not living into what he has called us to, are opportunities for him to show us grace so that maybe at some point we can be convicted and get it right. The chances that God gives us, the grace that he shows us, are opportunities for us to learn, for us to grow, for us to mature, and for us to hopefully, without some type of condemnation or punishment, say like, hey, God, I haven't been doing right. God, I haven't been living up to what you called me to do. I feel convicted. Maybe it was a devotional that I read. Maybe it was a sermon that I heard. Maybe it was me reading scripture on my own time. But something happened. I feel convicted. I realize there's a gap, and now I'm going to live into it. And so in his lack of responding, instead of allowing ourselves to believe that God is rubber stamping our foolishness, if we look at it as if God has given us grace and space to grow, then we have an opportunity to be closer to him. Because here is what the sacrifice means. If we think about the gift of salvation, if we think about the constant forgiveness, if we think about the grace that has been provided to us, if we think about all of the things that we celebrate, right? Lord, you are good and your mercy endures forever. Absolutely. Amen. We worship you. Absolutely. If we think about all of these things, then us bringing sacrifices to God, then is a response to how good he has been. And too many times we look at what we are called to, whether it's being called to service, whether it's being called to justice, whether it's being called to give and tithe to the church, as a burden, when it should really be something that we are thankful for. Lord, I'm excited to bring myself to the house of the Lord, and I'm doing this out of an overflowing of gratefulness because you are a good God. Right? Like church fellowship shouldn't feel like a chore, because I'm so inundated with the forgiveness of God and the mercy of God that I can't help but to come and share in community with what God has done in my life and has been doing in my life for years and years and years. If I really believe that everything that I have belongs to God, my gifts, my talents, my skills, so my ability to sing or dance, or my ability to compute difficult numbers, or my ability to organize, or my ability to clean, and these things afford me opportunities, when I'm asked to take some of the things that I gain as a result of the gifts that God has given me, it should be done with a thankfulness. Because if God hadn't blessed me with those things, then what would I have? So God is saying, listen, I don't need it because it's mine. I haven't required you to serve the kingdom and serve the church. I haven't required you to tithe because I need it. I'm giving you the opportunity to do it to show your gratefulness and your thankfulness. And I think if in our hearts we make that switch, right? God doesn't need me. God chooses me. God uses me. God has given of me freely. And as a response, why shouldn't I give to him thankfully? That's why it says God loves a cheerful giver, right? It's this giving that comes as a response of how thankful I am for God's blessing on my life. And it's not like I'm not paying for the blessings, right? Because if we could pay for blessings, then I'd probably just take my whole check every week and put it in, right? Like, just give me more blessings. But it's more saying, if you look at it from a practical standpoint, we've all benefited from somebody else's giving at some point, right? Whether your conversion happened at camp is there because people faithfully gave and helped build these camps and create these camps and created these budgets where the high school students and college students can go and be mentors and guidance counselors and all those things that your kid needs or that you needed. So when you had that moment, to respond to Jesus is the result of somebody giving. It was the result of somebody pouring the word of God into those counselors and entrusting them. It's all the result of somebody giving their money, giving their time, giving their heart. The people who taught Sunday school, the people who have been through this church in staff positions or volunteer positions in churches all over the country. For those of you who are from, I know some folks here from Colorado and folks from Minnesota and folks from all over the world, but wherever it was that you first encountered Jesus Christ, it's because of the work of God in other people's lives around you that was the result of them thankfully and sacrificially giving. And so part of our responsibility, first to God, and then I believe to the church, is to think about how our giving, our sacrificial giving and our sacrificial sharing of who we are, right? So our mind matching the gifts results in other folks' lives being changed because they interact with the Sunday school teachers and the folks in the nursery and the folks who are in here and who are walking around. It's this circle of connection that comes from people responding in faith to the goodness of God. And I think too many times we allow ourselves not only to have this sense of self-importance, but we also forget that it's all about God in the first place, right? So in those moments when we stop giving or we stop participating because we don't like certain things, that's a heart issue between you and God. It may immediately affect the church, but ultimately, it affects your relationship with God. Because God is bigger than our feelings. God is bigger than our disagreements. God is bigger than our church. And so sometimes we have to remind ourselves that the gifts and the things that we sacrifice are things given to God that the church benefits from. Does that make sense? So I'm doing this for God. You benefit, but it's my thanks offering to God. And if something here affects my heart and it makes me stop bringing, but it affects here, but it mostly affects this. Because what I don't believe God will do on the day of judgment is say, well, yeah, you know what? I know you hated X's shoes. He wore gym shoes in the pulpit. That was a no-no. I understand why you stopped going to church and stopped giving. God's not gonna say that. He's gonna judge your heart. So this text, as we go deeper and deeper, first, I believe last week starts with this reminder that we have to make sure that our hearts are in the right place. Are our hearts after God? Are we desperately trying to please God? Are we inundated with the love of God, and does the love of God flow through us? Are we constantly growing in our relationship with God? So when we say things like God knows our heart, He'll see that our hearts are after Him. So I always think about King David, because King David wasn't perfect, right? He was a scoundrel in a lot of ways. The Bible says he was a man after God's own heart. So it doesn't mean that we are perfect or without mistakes. It just means that our desire is to please God, right? So where's your heart? Because it's a matter of the heart. But the next thing I believe as we talk today is that we have to be reminded to get over ourselves. Because we need God more than He needs us. The gifts that we have, the talents that we had, he receives them and accepts them, but we should bring them out of thankfulness, out of a thankful response to his blessings, to his acknowledgement of us. God watches over us. It says that we serve a God that never sleeps nor slumbers. He's constantly watching over us, looking over us. And even in those moments when we feel like he's not there, God is there. And so everything that I do, even when I'm tired, is out of thankfulness to God. Everything that I give, even when I'm like, man, I really want to buy those new gym shoes, or I really want to buy this new video game, or I really want to buy this new car, I really want to buy whatever vice you have that keeps you from being a generous giver, even if it's more serious, like, man, I feel like my rent may be shorter, I only have $10. Even these things that like come and consume our hearts, that we bring those things not begrudgingly, we bring them with thanksgiving, trusting, as the text says, sacrifice thank offerings to God, fulfill your vows to the Most High, and call on me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you will honor me. We serve a God who will respond to our sacrifice and respond to our offerings. He will deliver us. Do we trust him? Do we trust him enough to give back to him of the things that he has given to us? It's his anyway. And so we have to ask ourselves, if our hearts are really after God, if we realign our thinking, then are we like the children of Israel who are outwardly worshiping him, but inwardly hate his mandates, hate what he's called us to, struggle with the word and going deeper? Or are we joyfully coming and saying, God, I give this to you. I give myself away. Lord, take all of me. Here am I, take all of me. Where are you? Where is your heart? And now where is your mind? Is it full of thanksgiving? Or is it full of resentment? That's a question I can't answer for you. Because as I look out, I see you worshipers. I see you're here. I see you're faithful. And so my assumption is that you all are all living the lives that God has called you to live. Well, on the day of judgment, my account won't matter because God sees all. So what does God see? When God looks at your life, what does God see? Does he see someone who has responded to the blessing of salvation with joy and thanksgiving and gladness? Or does he see somebody who's like, thou shalt not steal? Crap, I love stealing. Thou shalt not lie. Lying is so fun. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Man, she cooks better than my wife. Or does he see somebody whose heart is full of thanksgiving? I believe we're a congregation full of people who have hearts of thanksgiving. But the last thing I say is this, is that one of the things we have to constantly ask ourselves, on a larger scale, right? When we ask God to bless us individually, or we ask God to bless our congregation or bless our neighborhoods, and we feel like God is not responding, do we ever get to a point where we ask ourselves, what are we doing with what God has given us already? That's where I'll leave us today. What are we doing with what God has already given us? Let's pray.